Welcome back to the MetaMinds podcast, where we help you master your mindset. My name is Eamon. I'm a full-time video strategist.
And my name's Dan, and I'm a fully qualified counsellor.
And today we are sitting with Tim Butters, the co-founder of City Cave, a health and wellness space and float space. So, Tim, how you going?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic.
Not bad considering COVID-19 is a bit of a thing at the moment.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. I suppose now it's good that we've had some time to actually figure out a time to do a podcast. So, to dive straight into it, how did you, what was the thing that actually kind of got you inspired to create a float and wellness center?
Good question. It's pretty crazy starting a floatation therapy business. A lot of people have never really heard of it. I had a business before this. I was in the retail space, so we're in home textiles and things like that. Had an opportunity to exit, and I was in a bit of a transitional space, myself and my business partner from my last company. Someone told us about floatation therapy. Sounded a little bit hippie for my liking at the beginning, on the early side of things, but they just began to explain it's a really good focusing tool. I was in a very transitional period of my life, so I thought I'd go give it a go. I had nothing to lose. It's a lot of physical benefits kind of sat really comfortably with me with the magnesium and things like that to help elongate your spine and obviously increase your magnesium levels and things like that. So we decided to go down and give it a go, and absolutely fell in love with it. The rule of thumb with float therapy is it takes about 3 times to actually feel the benefits. For myself and my business partner, we just loved it straight away. So we went into 2 separate tanks in these rooms, expecting nothing. Again, thinking it's a little bit airy-fairy and a little bit fluffy. And then we walked out onto the street after our first session and looked at each other and just said, business idea. This is something that everybody should do. Anybody can benefit from it. And then we went down the path of kind of researching it and developing our product and our float pools that we have today. They're not the typical generic float pod. It's an open style room. And over time, over the last few years, we've developed it to add on things like massage and infrared sauna and create membership categories and things like that. So City Cave was born in 2016.
Fair enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's a very quick time to actually scale. Did you expect it to scale that quickly, or?
Look, we did start this business with scale in mind. It's great to be in a space that is really new. There's pros and cons to it. It's hard because we know everybody will benefit from it. We know that there's oodles of benefits, and it's going to be something that we can sell, but people don't know what it is already. So it means that we have to spend a lot of time, money and resources on pushing that message. So it was always going to be a slow ramp up, but we managed to offer a product that people were really drawn to. So it did grow a little bit faster at the beginning. We've decided to go down the franchise route. We've got 12 locations now, and 9 of them are franchised. We've decided to scale with franchising because it brings in like-minded people. It brings other people that are invested into the brand, and it's just a really nice, healthy way to grow a business fairly rapidly. You'll probably be very familiar with the term first to market wins. So we really want to solidify a really solid foundation, and then I have no doubt City Cave will be a worldwide brand one day.
Love it. I love
that's great.
The scope in which you're dreaming of bringing it, because a lot of people, as you mentioned, potentially start with business and they don't really have that huge goal in mind, and they make this thing and it ends up being a nice little cozy thing that sustains them, but unless they have that higher thing in mind, and I think building a brand that people can trust and believe in, such as City Cave, and scaling it that quickly, it's it's crazy, and it's good to see, because a few years ago I was already thinking, I was like, why, where is that thing? It needs to happen, but obviously didn't have capital to kind of sink into it. So
and it's scary. It's hard. A lot of people talk about business. It's very similar to warfare and winning and losing and competition and taking on the big guys. That whole David and Goliath kind of a struggle. And it does take a lot of emotion and energy to take that first step. And I think that's one of the things why we really, really were drawn to franchising. I love startup business. It is the most exciting thing, and anybody that's in startup, if they're going to be successful, they have to be passionate about it. Otherwise, it just won't work. I get to relive that with my franchisees every time with a proven model that I know works. So it's kind of like I get that initial thrill all over again every month, every time we open a new center. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you refer to it as warfare, because you kind of gave us a little bit of a rundown of how it kind of ramped up to this position now where you've got multiple stores and you're expanding quite regularly. So when this initially started. I'm really curious about, did you launch the floatation therapy as a standalone service, or was this a wellness center?
Mm-hmm.
And when you did start it, like what kind of things did you come up against, like presenting floatation therapy to Australians?
Yeah, it's a really good question because we have pivoted a lot to get to this point, and I don't doubt that we will do that in the future. We did start as just solely a floatation therapy center, and because we were preparing for scale from day one, I wasn't getting into it to just own one center. We started off with 2 float pods, the traditional egg-shaped thing, and 2 float pools that we built and designed, like I've shown you guys earlier on today, to do some R&D, to research what people are going to be comfortable in. We had some people that were like, absolute diehards and loved the capsule style thing, but it ended up becoming a bit of a no-brainer to go move forward with the actual open float room, because it's you can have 2 people in there. It's a little bit more inviting. It's not so claustrophobic. A lot of people were like, oh, God, I could never get in one of those things. It was referred to as a salty coffin a few times.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting rid of the 2 float pods, focusing on our float pools and developing them over time to what they are today. We moved from float therapy to infrared sauna. So infrared sauna works really complementary with floatation therapy back to back as well. You can do one and then the other. And then it was a natural progression into massage from there. So starting with float therapy, the hardest hurdle to get over was that nobody knew what it is. So it wasn't like saying, hey, my gym's better than that gym down the road. It's like saying, we've got this thing called float therapy and blah, 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 blah. And it takes 20 minutes to actually sell someone on something that they don't know about. My mum even got emotional when I told her. She got so upset when I said I'm investing all of my money into float therapy. She's like, what the hell is that? They're from a small town in New Zealand, and they're kind of thinking, I come from a strong construction background. My family are in it. I was in it. My business partner was in it before this. So it was a real left field move. So that took a lot for me emotionally to get over that as well, because a bit of my support wasn't there like it probably should have been. And now it's everywhere and all around me. It's amazing.
So, like, if you could, now that you've gone through these years of progression, how do you think you could describe float therapy to someone who's coming off the street and it's their first time coming in?
Look, floatation therapy is based off sensory deprivation, because a lot of your listeners probably still don't know what float therapy is. It's a float pool that's got 300 ml of water in it, and there's 400 kilos of hospital-grade Epsom salt, which is a magnesium sulfate. What that does, it helps lower your cortisol levels. It's a really natural remedy. Back in the day, people used to have shots of Epsom salt to flush out their internal systems, and it's used for a lot of skin irritations and things like that. It helps elongate your spine. When you're in the float pool, you float effortlessly on the surface, so you have nothing touching your skin. You have all of your senses are totally shut down. So it's like, essentially, in a nutshell, it's ultimate relaxation like you've never felt before. When I tried it for the first time, I knew about the magnesium benefits and I knew about the kind of physical stuff. The mental stuff is a total game changer. Like standing up in a float pool after your session, you feel gravity for the first time, and it's heavy, man. Like gravity is crazy heavy, and we walk around with it all the time. And after taking that sensation away for an hour in a pitch black environment, that's when you realize how beneficial something like that is. It's proper rest for your body. There's an acronym called REST, which is Restricted Environmental Stimulation Therapy. That's kind of like the traditional way of explaining what it is. Yeah, but everyone gets something different from it. And I guess the hardest thing with trying to sell something that's so new and different is you might go in there and have a total different experience to what I have. Some people find it super creative, though you're in obviously complete darkness. Some people say they see colors, and it's like people say it's like an LSD trip, and then someone else is like, oh, I was just in there and I was awake the whole time, but it was relaxing. It's just 2 polar different things.
And it's interesting because my first introduction to flotation therapy was through City Cave at the Mount Gravatt store.
Oh, was it?
And I got the 3-pack with my partner.
Oh, cool.
And prior to that, I kind of had seen the pods, and they made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like I felt, not that I'm claustrophobic, but there was a whole, I don't know, kind of vibe about it that I just didn't really touch. But when I was introduced to the float pools, I did feel completely different. And I felt the first session, it did take me a little bit of kind of getting used to a different sensation. Yeah. But like you said, 3 sessions for a lot of people, they kind of hit that peak. And after my 3rd one, like I was addicted to it basically. And I really enjoyed it. So it's a fascinating experience.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that you've been that's so cool that you've actually been into one of our centers. And I think, that feeling that you're explaining of expecting this thing that's like, oh, I don't know if I want to get in there, and then going in and going, wow, it's so nice. That was the secret sauce. That's what we've been looking for. Floatation therapy is really, really good for depression and anxiety. And if someone's suffering from anxiety and depression, the last thing they want to have to do is get over another barrier to get a therapy for what they're going through. So, yeah, that was a really big thing for us. It's
interesting you talk about barriers, and we were talking about barriers just before we came here in terms of business. And it's like there's obviously advantages to not trying to sell someone like better than the gym down the road, because then you're not in direct competition with a lot of things that are the same, you know. But then obviously the disadvantage is that it is new and there is this barrier to entry kind of thing. So I suppose marketing would be kind of a large part of it. Maybe can you walk us through a little bit about like what your thoughts were around marketing when you initially got started?
Yep. I love that question because we've got a bit of a funny story about it. When we first started, again, thinking, where are we going to throw our budget? We had a budget of, I can't remember, let's say $5,000 a month or whatever it was, and it had to be split through different channels. And if you make a mistake in marketing, you don't get a return on investment, and you can't quantify a lot of it. So it was a lot of trial and error in the early days. So we thought, genius idea, when we first open our centre, which we've never worked in or even tried and tested yet, let's give everyone a free float for the first week. So we had 320 spots available, and we had 300 floaters on week one. And myself and my business partner were our only staff. We didn't have any help. We hadn't tested the machines and equipment yet. Opened the doors, and it was just issue after issue after issue. We were having pumps blowing and then having to call people and cancel appointments. The hygiene, we were kind of playing with different chemicals to get the water balanced out right. We were running around like crazy people. It was the worst mistake I've ever made in business history. Like, we actually hadn't tried the place out yet. So that was a really expensive mistake, because then we had to close for 2 weeks afterwards and damage control to try and fix everything to get it commercial. Now, I'm happy to say we've managed to overcome that, and we have our strict channels that we use. Instagram, Facebook, because it's so visual and inviting, and it's really nice to be able to show our point of difference through real life examples. A little bit of print, we do a little bit of flyer, we do normally a bit of maybe a billboard or two when a new centre's opening.
I saw that one at Wynnum, that was there for a while.
That's great, isn't it? But generally, it's word of mouth. We look after our customers. It's like this whole reciprocity thing. We're in a space where the product that we're selling helps people and it makes them feel good. So then they naturally go and tell their friends and family to come in and try this new thing. About 40% of our new customers comes from word of mouth, which is huge. Massive, wow. Absolutely massive. So that's been something that we've been trying to work on, how to grow that side of things without putting too much pressure on it. So at the moment, it's very natural. Everything's really organic, which is a really good place to be in.
That's awesome. Yeah. And like I suppose in terms of marketing, like as you mentioned, you're selling a feeling, you're selling an experience. And if that experience is positive, like you can go buy a burger and it's an experience, but this is more of like a whole experience. You come in and the way it's lit and the way you feel and everything. Like, yeah, I know that I definitely, like, when someone gives me a word of mouth suggestion from that, I'm way more likely to try it unless someone, besides someone tell me to get a burger or something, so that's definitely an advantage for you.
Yeah.
To switch gears a little bit, you've been in lockdown now because of this whole global pandemic for 3 weeks or so?
Yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit of maybe some of the struggles that have happened, because that kind of came out of nowhere, and potentially some of your plan when you're coming to reopen in the coming weeks, very hopefully?
Yeah, it's been a massive shock for us, like every small business in Australia and all around the world. And I feel like we've handled it fairly well from a company perspective. We are a big family, and every City Cave is ran and managed by its own owner. Obviously, being a franchisee, they're an owner of their business. So we all have invested interest to try and get through this and survive. It's not just everybody sitting around waiting for direction. We've pulled together as a team better than I could have ever imagined. And I think it's really shown how strong our culture is as a brand. The hardest thing is obviously stopping a lot of the money out, a lot of the overheads, rent and staff costs and power and all that sort of stuff. So that was a big focus. We all kind of went into emergency mode when we heard the announcement that we were going to have to be closed. We thought we potentially could have got through it fairly unscathed, being a health and wellness centre. We are confident that a City Cave is actually a really safe place to be. All of our therapies are really solitary. COVID-19 doesn't survive in temperatures over 50 degrees. Our saunas are 60 degrees. There's a lot of areas that we thought we could argue it or maybe lobby to stay open, but we all collectively decided to close our doors. But look, there is some positives that have come out of it for us. Obviously, the negatives is the financial side of things, and everybody maps out their year. They have budgets and things like that have all been thrown in the bin, and they have to be obviously rejigged, which we help with that from a head office perspective. But the positive stuff is everybody gets to focus on development. Everybody gets to take a step back and take a breath. And for us as a franchise, we stopped all of our franchise fees as soon as we found out that we had to close, which has been really good. It's been great to show other franchisors in Australia what a good franchise system should be doing. And we have had the help of the FCA, the Franchise Council of Australia, to help promote that. And yeah, look, I truly feel like we're all going to come out stronger on the other side of this. It was really emotional getting the direction to close down, and we all jumped onto a Zoom call, the whole group together, and it was this real somber kind of sad feeling, but we've managed to turn it into, I wouldn't say positive, but we've managed to turn it into as good a situation as we possibly could have. I want to look back at this time. This is obviously unprecedented times, and it may be the only real adversity that we have in our business careers potentially to this magnitude. I want to look back and say this is what we achieved in COVID-19. We managed to refresh our centres. We've got 3 city caves that are doubling down at the moment, and they're investing into their business and renovating it so they can open fresh. There is some good success stories that will come from this for sure.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. That's great. And it's also really good to hear that everyone's kind of coming together as well. So through such a negative event happening, like the fact that you guys can go on a Zoom call together, and even though you said it was so it's such an experience for you that kind of caught you all off guard, very emotional, and no one really knew what was going to happen. It's great to hear that you guys kind of all stuck through that. And I guess something that I'm really interested about, being a wellness center and being like quite a niche kind of area to be in, especially like in Australia as well. What kind of things have surprised you about being in this space? Any standout stories that have been like really taken you off guard? Or?
This industry is amazing, and I'm so happy to be in the wellness space because people are really receptive to working together. Coming from construction, it's literally, if you've got a problem, have a shot of concrete and harden the fuck up. Excuse my language. But, it's kind of, you have to just harden up. In retail, it's, I'm going to be sneakier than you. My last homeware company, you'd have to put things like in color palettes to try and encourage people to buy more stuff that they don't really need, and that's what a lot of consumerism is all about. But for us, there was a real kind of pivotal point in City Cave for me. It was about 6 months into it where it turned from just a business into like my life's purpose. It was when we had a lady, she came in for to try float therapy. She was going through chemo, and she walked out of the float tank and was walking down the hallway. And this was in that weird time of never ran one of these centers before. I don't know what I'm doing. We were making mistakes in certain areas. And she came down the hallway and she was crying. And I thought, shit, what have we done? We've done something wrong. Yeah. And then she came down and she said, thank you guys so much. This was the most amount of relief that I have ever had since I've been going through chemo. She couldn't sleep because of the weight on her shoulder. And she's like, I just had the best time ever. Then she paid us and walked out. And that's the perfect example of a win-win-win. And that's being in an industry that can do that. The world is our oyster. There's no stopping it. If we can be giving people proper value, like not value where someone goes, oh yeah, I see why that's worth that, just like something that's non-quantifiable, like a feeling, that has been the best thing for us. And then being able to work with competitors. We've got other float centers that we work directly with because we're all fighting that good fight. Yoga studios, gyms, a lot of people are doing a lot of good and are all itching to collaborate, which is cool.
That's really great.
I love that story. And I think there's a lot of these kind of businesses, or at least the newer generation is really looking to get more into that kind of conscious business space where you are actually giving something of value. And, I know it's the same for Dan and myself, where it's like, I'm in marketing myself, and, you walk into a shop and you can tell that something's laid out and someone spent hours and hours like to make sure that you can pick it up and purchase it and walk out the door. And you're right, you get home and you're like, I didn't need this. Like, I've already got beers in the fridge or whatever it is, So I think, that's definitely really awesome that you are doing that. And it is fulfilling as well. Cause like, people can go into business and then you realize you're trapped in this machine and it's not actually a fulfilling thing for you. So it sounds like you're in a win-win, which is awesome. Something I wanted to ask about was like, if you could go back to Tim at the start that has this realization and knows that he's going to execute on this huge journey, like what would be maybe one or two pieces of advice that you would give that to him, aside from obviously the whole thing with the first week?
I was going to jump at that straight away. Look, we had the mindset of growth from day one. So I'm very, very goal focused and goal orientated. And the only reason that we've been able to kind of get through all the adversity to get to this point has been because I've had that goal in mind from day one. So growth wise, if I told myself back then that the company was going to be global, then I probably would have gone, yeah, I know that, because it's something that I've always been so focused on. I guess certain things that I've learned along the way about kind of hiring the right people and making sure the marketing is spent in the right places and looking for the fundamental differences and doing things properly at the beginning. When we built our first center, we made so many mistakes when it comes to construction and customer flow and things like that. We now can relay that to our franchisees to make sure they don't make the same mistakes that we do. We have spent countless amount of hours and a ridiculous amount of money on redoing certain things. The biggest one is getting rid of the float pods and putting in our float rooms, which we have a patent pending on all of the technology around that. I think just it's more of a structural side of things would be the biggest amount of advice that I could probably give a younger Tim.
Which is like, I suppose that's a good thing to hear, because like there was no way that you would actually be able to, give that advice. Like you literally have to experience those downfalls so you can come out of it on the other side. You couldn't have predicted that going into it at all.
Yeah,
no,
not at all.
And I think over time I've become like a massive fan of franchising, not just ours, but from many business models, because you know that it's that unspoken stuff that has been worked out for a new business owner. New business is super tough at the best of times. And to be able to get a bit of a head start and a jump start.
Give someone an operational manual.
This
is exactly how it works. So,
And on that note of franchisees, how do you go about choosing who you're going to allow to franchise it? Like, is there quite a process there?
Oh man, it is so important. It is everything. And we are the guys, our head office are the ones that allow someone to come into the brand. But that person has a huge effect on all of our other franchisees who have put their hard-earned money into this brand. We love our franchisees like family, and we go through a vetting process much like this. It's about getting to know someone on a personal level. The business side of things, we got that. It's under control. They just need to be the right human being, essentially, at the end of the day. We don't go out and we don't spend money on marketing for franchisees at this stage. Everything's been organic. We've got 9 amazing people, and I say that we're lucky that we've got those, that they managed to find us. But I think we're just fortunate that we're in a space that attracts really passionate people. We're not a burger joint, like you were talking about before. We're not somewhere that someone just looks at the P&Ls. We want to find people that understand why we're doing what we're doing. We're in a very lucrative space, and if it's done right at the beginning, people can make a lot of money from it. But we're not looking for people that just want to make a lot of money. We're now moving into this different focus from originally having our one store and looking after our customers, so we're looking after their wellness, to now taking a backward step and we're looking after the franchisees, not just their wellness, but their financial space, their financial wellness in a way, to use a bit of a buzzword. So all of our time and effort goes into finding those right people. And during this COVID-19 debacle, we've had a lot of inquiries, which has been great. We're on the phone to them all the time, getting to know them. And I think a lot of people have lost faith in the fact that having a job is the safe thing to do. A lot of C-suiters from the city have lost their high-paying jobs and are on JobKeeper, and they don't know what it's going to look like on the other end. At least if you're a business owner and you've built your model up to be financially sound, you can kind of ride out these times fairly easily by taking certain tactics and whatnot, and you're in actual control.
Yeah, and I guess that's really important. Like you said, being a conscious business and being in the wellness space, like you said, you would attract people who would have that kind of mindset as well. But the fact that you've got such a thorough process to find the right human being for that fit, there's no like job hiring process where you can find the perfect person, but
Yeah.
you're obviously trying to do the work to make it fit with your brand and your alignment and I guess your mission as well.
Yeah.
To try to create a conscious business.
I think that's the scariest thing about scale. Like for us, we're going to do 150 in Australia in the next 3 years. We'll be doing 1,500 in America. The scariest thing for me is thinking about that vetting process. And when I can't do it anymore, handing that over to somebody else. And how do I trust, or how do I find somebody that can do that job? And then how can that person be scaled? It's not a fear. It's just something that I'm very, very mindful of, because it's not just me and it's not my brand. It's not like I'm overly proud of the brand. It's all these other people that have put their money in to start their city cave. They've backed it. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Well then.
Cool.
Yeah.
I suppose like one more thing is for anyone out there that's potentially maybe heard of anything, and obviously like without like mentioning the detail like that you said before, if there's like one thing that you would scream and shout off the top of the building to that one person that's maybe curious about something like this, like what is it that you would tell them?
Do it. Like I think the worst thing possible that I could imagine is getting through to being 60 years old and thinking back to, why didn't I give that a go? Life is amazing. We're in such an amazing part of the world, and living in Australia, New Zealand, or America, we're so fortunate. Even if things went really bad, that's not that bad. It's not as bad as dragging your ass through a job your whole life to get to the end of your days and you look back on your life and have regret. For me, that was my main shift out of retail, and I shifted out of retail with nowhere to go. I didn't even know about the wellness space yet, but I made that move because I didn't want to die being the home textile guy, retail guy. I just knew there was something else out there. You've got to have drive, you've got to have passion, but the biggest thing, you've got to have the desire to want abundance. We always want to partner with people that they want a lot of love, they want a lot of money, they want a lot of kind of pride, because working for yourself, whether it be City Cave or starting your own business, doing anything, you'll get that soul food from being the only person to blame at the end of the day. You're responsible for yourself. So just do it.
Yeah,
to steal
great.
Nike's term, just do it.
Just do it, yeah.
I was actually referring to like the float, but that's good enough. I really appreciate the business advice, and really appreciate your time today as well. You have a fascinating story, and definitely keen to check out some of these facilities. So
Sweet.
Thanks for coming on.
Let's get you boys in for a float.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thanks.